Welcome to the Salvos. We trust that you'll be blessed by this week's video.
28 through to chapter 7, verse 7. It's one of those weird ones where it's in between. I feel awkward saying it. Anyway, Exodus chapter 6, verse 28 is where we're starting. And in my Bible it's entitled, Aaron to Speak from Moses. Now when the Lord spoke to Moses in Egypt, he said to him, I am the Lord. Tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, everything I tell you. But Moses said to the Lord, since I speak with faltering lips, why would Pharaoh listen to me? Then the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of his country. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in Egypt, he will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt, and with mighty acts of judgment I will bring out my divisions, my people, the Israelites. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring the Israelites out of it. Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 years old, he could have got free fish and chips, and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. Now before we go any further, I have two apologies to make, and one is to Bronnie. Now you don't know Bronnie, she's just walked in. Simon and I know Bronnie because she was at Dandenong when I was a mere cadet. But Bronnie, you've heard this sermon before, and you may not remember, but you have. So here's hoping it's just as good today as it was a couple of years ago. But today's sermon is all about jelly beans. Lily, can you go around and give everybody a bag, and then you can have one? And one to your brother. Now, my first question for you is, do you know what your personality type is? Have you heard all about personality types before? There's Myers-Briggs, there's all sorts of ones. Do you know what your personality type is? Have you ever thought about it? How something somewhere in the universe that someone came up with might actually explain who you are? That was surprising. Anyway, do you know your personality type? Well, I'm going to help you this morning, okay? It's going to be very useful. This isn't just a sermon, this is helping you with all of your life. Myers-Briggs is very well and good, but this morning we are going to use jelly beans to tell you what your personality type is. Ellen, can you pull up thank you. And can you go down another one? So before we do use the jelly beans, I want to give you some fun facts about jelly beans that you may not know, but may come in handy for your next quiz or trivia night at the RSL or wherever you are. So National Jelly Bean Day is celebrated on the 22nd of April. We missed it this year. Next year we'll have to put it on the calendar and everybody must have jelly beans. No one really knows the exact origin of jelly beans, but they are thought to be a descendant of Turkish delight and Jordan almonds. And I guess when you think about it, they are kind of an amalgamation of those, but who knows. It takes 7 to 21 days to make a jelly bean. Just one. So one jelly bean that you're about to put in your mouth took maybe 21 days for someone to make. I think that's ridiculous. There are, for us diet-conscious people, 130 calories and 37 grams of sugar in one serving of jelly beans. But it's okay because one serving of jelly beans is about 35. So, you could eat that packet and not feel too guilty. In the early 20th century, a jelly bean was slang for a man of no style or substance. So if you see anyone around town that you think has no style or substance, you can call them a jelly bean and they won't know it, so you won't get punched. They were the first candy to be sold by weight rather than by piece. Very first. Each year in the US there are 16 billion jelly beans manufactured just for Easter. Just for Easter. It's amazing. This is enough to circle the earth more than 3 times if they were laid end to end. Which I think would look kind of cool personally, but anyway. And they were President Reagan's favourite candy, and he used them to help him quit smoking when he was governor of California. As part of his inauguration in 1981, 7,000 pounds of jelly beans were ordered and distributed. Jelly Belly created a new flavour, blueberry, specifically for the event. There you go. They are your one candy. Now, I would like you to open up your packet of Blueco Gel jelly beans. In it, you should find every colour. If you don't, I apologise. I didn't package them. We'll send a letter to the company. But what I want you to do is to look at your bag of jelly beans and pick a colour, not based on flavour. Pick a colour. You don't necessarily have to eat it. Pick a colour, not based on flavour, but by colour alone. In your bag, you should have red, orange, yellow, green, purple, pink, black, and white. If you do not have all those colours, but you like one of those colours better, pretend. Red, orange, yellow, green, purple, pink, black, or white. I would like you to pick one of those based purely on colour, not by taste. For example, if I was going to pick green, I might not because I don't like the flavour of the green. But if I like the colour green, that doesn't matter today. Alright, has everybody got your jelly bean? Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the personality types based on jelly bean. I have them up on the slide. And if you have that colour, I would like you to stand up. So if we go down, Ellen, what's our first one? Oh, she's cute. Next one. Red or pink? If you picked red or pink, stand up. Ellen. Red or pink is courageous. Their energy seems boundless. Yes. Smiles much of the time. Yes. We'll ask another person what the problem is if she is not, or he or she is not smiling. Yes. Genuinely cares about people and becomes involved in others' problems. And that's just me. Is highly influenced by others, shares their sadness or grief, makes decisions with his or her heart and acts on impulses of the heart, and spends a great deal of time on the phone, usually listening to others, is a sensitive, enthusiastic friend or lover. It's not bad, it's not bad. Alright, go down again, Ellen. Orange. Anyone pick orange? If you did, you were those things. Usually have a quick wit, do not like to be left alone, is friendly and has a ready smile. Alright, let's keep going. Yellow, because I have to put things in the rainbow spectrum. Anyone pick yellow? If you picked yellow, stand on up for a sec. Not usually outspoken. I think it might have failed a little bit there, just knowing some of the people that might have stood up. Is always in a state of transition, whether he or she is 8 or 80. I say looking at Bronnie, who just moved house. Is usually smart and innovative, often artistic. Is sometimes confused when making decisions, unsure where they're supposed to be. Is a hard worker. Is exciting to be with and will try anything so long as it's safe. Is often spiritual and looks at things with perspective and respects others' opinions. Alrighty, take a seat. Next one. Green. Anyone pick green? Yeah, I was wondering if anyone picked green, because it's an interesting one. Loves recognition, is often seen as a leader, holds a highly visible position, is a respecter of authority and tradition, and is decisive, directed, and focused. That's interesting. Alright, keep going. Purple. Before we go any further, I would like to say that this is what I identify with, and when I was typing this out, I went, oh my goodness, that is me. I sent it to my best friend, and she said, that's hilarious. Purple, are flirty and passionate. We're going to go passionate. We're not going with the foot, we're going passionate. Yeah. Highly creative and highly excitable. Has new ideas and can be a visionary. Maybe. Has a short attention span. Can't stay put for long. Yes. Can be disorganised. Maybe. Might prefer to close the door instead of dealing with the organisation. And can be a procrastinator who thrives on chaos. Enjoys the challenge of different problems. I do not thrive on chaos, it's just that chaos follows me. That is my theory on life. Alright, thank you. Take a seat. You're eating one, are you? Okay, that's good. Alright, next. think this is our last one. Black or white? Did anyone pick black or white? Did I not do blue? I can't even look at my phone. I will tell you what blue is soon. I must have somehow missed it. How did I miss blue? Okay. Black or white? Highly structured and organised. Like surroundings to be neat. When giving an assignment, wants to know how many pages, exact requirements. Always wants to know the rules. Memorises things well. Can't stand sloppy, unorganised people. And deliberates making decisions. I would actually have picked black or white to be an assignment. Blue. I don't know why I missed blue. Come back to me after the meeting and I will look it up. Black or white did you? Alright, what did you think of your personality type there? This test has actually been studied in universities where things like that happen. And it is actually known to be about 80% correct for people. I've got no idea how this works. Not a clue. But about 80% of people actually do identify with what they say comes up in that. It's very funny. But I think you'd probably be safe to say you probably found something in yourself in all colours. Did you? Was there a few that you went, oh, maybe I was that way. Oh, maybe I should have picked purple, because we're fun people. This test can be true, but you are not just one colour. This morning I want to speak to you a little bit about Moses and Aaron, a pair of men who are working together to try and save the people of Egypt. Have you heard this part of the story before? Have you thought about it? It's from Exodus. We don't often preach from the Old Testament, but there you go. In the run-up to our scripture for today, we learn the story of a young Moses and how he went from a baby battling the odds in a giant river, to Egyptian royalty, to wandering nomad, and then seeing God in a burning bush, and having to explain to a group of elders why he should be the trusted deliverer. We meet a man from humble beginnings who was blessed with the privilege of nobility. But more than that, we meet a man called to serve God for the benefit of God's people, who doubts himself and his own abilities to perform the task. Which leads me to my first point for this morning. Know yourself and your own limitations. In Exodus 6, verses 28 to 30, we can see Moses doubting himself and what he is capable of. Now when the Lord spoke to Moses in Egypt, he said to him, I am the Lord. Tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, everything I tell you. But Moses said to the Lord, since I speak with faltering lips, why would Pharaoh listen to me? And this is not the first time we see Moses worried and questioning himself when God's asking. In chapter 4, verse 1, after God has explained what he is to do, when speaking to the Israelites about their upcoming freedom, Moses says, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? Or in chapter 4, verse 10, he says, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. Or even in chapter 4, verse 13, it says, but Moses said, pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else. This is not a man who thought he was the right man for the job. Or woman, if you were talking about me. It appears, in fact, that Moses thinks that anybody else would be far better at what God is asking him to do. If public speaking, or even speaking, is not something you're comfortable with, how are you going to get up and A, get a whole nation of people to follow you, and then B, convince a powerful ruler, currently holding those people as slaves, that he no longer needs their services and that he should let them go? I thought preaching to you all about jelly beans and personality tests was bad enough. I'm not trying to convince you to let go of your slaves. Moses, perhaps rightly, was just simply telling God that for a job that probably required eloquence, he was not the guy. And yet God had other plans. And this wasn't the first or last time God would use the seemingly unequipped. If you go down, I found this interesting thing. Do you seriously think God can't use you? Noah was a drunk, Abraham was too old, Isaac was a daydreamer, Jacob was a liar, Leah was ugly, Joseph was abused. Moses had a stuttering problem. Gideon was afraid. Samson had long hair and was a womanizer. Rahab was a prostitute. Jeremiah and Timothy were too young. David had an affair and was a murderer. Elijah was suicidal. Isaiah preached naked. I wouldn't be going, but you know. Jonah ran from God. Naomi was a widow. Job went bankrupt. Peter denied Christ. The disciples fell asleep while praying. Martha worried about everything. That's me. The Samaritan woman was divorced. Zacchaeus was too small. Paul was too religious. Timothy had an ulcer. And Lazarus was dead. My personal favourite right at the end, they just slide that in. Lazarus was dead. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 to 31 says, "Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential, not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. It is because of him that you are in Christ Jesus, who has become for us wisdom from God, that is our righteousness, holiness, and redemption. Therefore, as it is written, let the one who boasts, boasts in the Lord." Boast in the Lord. Perhaps then it's just about thinking that your flaws can't stop you from serving God. By acknowledging them, perhaps that is what God means. Point 1, know your limitations. Which leads us to point 2, know your team. Moses wasn't very eloquent, but there was someone in his team who was. His brother, Aaron. Then the Lord said to Moses, "See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of his country." And after Moses' previous concerns in chapter 4, it says, "Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, 'What about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He was already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You should speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak, and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth, and as if you were God to him.'" You see, I very strongly believe that God did not make us to live and work solo. God made us to do life in a community, and within that community, God has given us everything that we need to fully see the will of God achieved. And when I think about that, I think about this place. Simon and I aren't perfect, it's very true. But yet in this place, and with the people that we have working, we get things done, don't we? And even when one of us falls over or something terrible happens, this place keeps ticking. By some miracle sometimes, I don't know how it happens. God didn't make us to work solo. God made us to work as a team. Ephesians 4:10 says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." This verse very plainly says that God made us to do good works, and that God planned in advance what we would live our lives doing. However, God didn't plan for us to do that work alone. We need people to work with us. God tells us in Ecclesiastes 4 verse 9 that 2 people are better than 1 because they get more done by working together. When you work as a team, you get so much more done. Plus, having good teammates alongside you is a whole lot more fun and less tiring. Just like ants who each have their own purpose, when we work together as a team, we can achieve great things. God knew what Moses was thinking, and there was already a plan in place to get the job done. With Aaron's help, Moses would go on to bring about the many plagues of Egypt, and then lead the Israelites to safety through a sea passage. Now, on all my escape routes, I don't think walking through the sea would have been one I would have come up with, especially because I don't particularly like being in the water that much. Know your team. But the key point, I think, is in point 3. Trust God. Once Moses had figured out what God had as a plan, I think his final test, and the one that we struggle with the most, or at least I do, was to remember that God could be trusted to do what God said God would do. Exodus chapter 7 says, "But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my sins and wonders in Egypt, he will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt, and with mighty acts of judgment I will bring out my divisions, my people the Israelites. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring the Israelites out of it." Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. Before Moses even stepped foot into the presence of Pharaoh, before he and Aaron were even born, God had plans under control. All they had to do was speak, and it was so. Through the words of Aaron and the leadership of Moses, God's people were free. Trust God. It's as simple and as incredibly difficult as that. And a life lesson I don't think anyone has ever fully learned. There's an old army song that says, "All that I am, all I can be, all that I have, all that is me. Accept and use, Lord, as you would choose, Lord, right now today. Take every action, every skill. Take all my dreams and bend them to your will. My all I give, Lord, for you I'll live, Lord. Come what may." All. This song, its writer, and indeed God, call us to trust and give all. That includes our slow speech, our negative attitudes, and even our doubts and trepidations, because God can and will use them, just like God can and will use those around us to work as a team and further the kingdom. Know yourself and your own limitations. Know your team and trust God. We all have different personalities, different gifts, different purposes. Though you may be a red jelly bean or a black jelly bean or a blue jelly bean, whose personality I forgot to give you. You were created for more and to be an individual. The true test is what we can all do together. After all, you can't make up a bag of jelly beans with just one colour, because they don't sell. Have you ever bought just a whole bag of black jelly beans? No, disgusting. Sacrilege. Sacrilege. That is not what is known. I can't say it. You don't buy them. You buy colours of all of them. For goodness sake. But what is our packet? If we're going back to our metaphor and we're all different coloured jelly beans sitting in a lovely packet on the shelf, not all black ones. No, I'm not even going to go there. I thought of something, but I won't. What is our packet? It's the city of Salem. I had the great privilege yesterday of attending Bishop Richard Trelaw's installation service. He's the newest bishop of Gippsland, and he's not actually that much older than I am. He has 2 young children. He's moved up from Melbourne. I'm relating to this man more and more as he was speaking. And I got to march in the procession, and behind me were the greatest amount of robes and hats and staffs I've ever seen in my life. And there was me and a lady from the Baptist church, and we were the only 2 not in robes. I felt very significantly underdressed in this outfit, and that doesn't happen very often. But I was warmly welcomed, invited to be a part of this day. And I started thinking more and more in the 2 hours that it might have gone on for, how incredibly special this event was. Now, I am not an Anglican. I've never spent time in an Anglican church. I have only ever known the Salvation Army. and the little bits and pieces that I've studied from elsewhere. So I do not understand the amount of times you stand and sit, or how everybody knows to do that. I do not know the responses. Some of them are even sung, and everybody knows them. Not a clue. I do not know half the hymns. Clueless about that. And yet, in the midst of this service, watching these mostly Anglicans get heavily involved in this service, it starts to creep up on you, doesn't it? At the start, you sit there thinking, I've got no idea what's going on, this is all a bit strange. And by the end, I was fully involved and a part of that service. I got the excitement. They've been waiting for this new bishop for 9 months. Now the guy who finally elected him said, we're sick of morning sickness, so if you could just start the job now. They've been waiting for this man for 9 months. He is going to lead the Anglican churches in this area. I get that. Communion took 15 minutes for the whole church in 6 different spots to get communion. I didn't understand it, but man, was it powerful. Watching these people break bread, drink from 1 cup of wine. If it got wiped in between, it's okay. But watching the spirituality, the deep felt spirituality, reminded me that it takes every colour of jelly bean to make a packet. Every flavour of denomination creates one church of God. And whilst I may not understand everything they do, whilst their theology may be a little bit different to ours, whilst I do not have a robe/quilt that I get to wear to church every Sunday, their denomination and their spirituality can empower and work with my spirituality to make a greater city of Salem. It's about how we work as a team. Now, I actually love that in this town, the ecumenical society is so strong that the churches work together as much as they possibly can. But for me, it was the challenge yesterday. How can I, as a red jelly bean, I'm going for red because I have lots of red. Maybe I should go for blue because, anyway. How can I, as a red jelly bean, work with the white jelly beans? Now they're white with their robes. Okay. How can I work with them to better make up a packet of not just black jelly beans? And how can I work better in this team, in this church, so that our packet can impact on Salem for the better? How can I set our slaves free? How can I help our homeless? How can I help our domestic violence victims? How can I help our hungry? How can I help our drug addicts who normally come in and we get very afraid of them? How can I work as a team so that just my colour of jelly bean can work with other colours of jelly bean? Today over there at that other church, they are having Bishop Richard's first service. And how I wish we could have gone, but we are 15 minutes too late, so we can't. But I'm excited about the Anglican Church at the moment. Not because I want to join, it's okay. I'm not going there. There's a lot that I don't know and a lot that I'm not going to ever want to know. But I'm excited about the churches in Salem. I'm excited about the changes that are coming. There is a new young bishop. What is he going to do for them? The Baptists are in a time of transition between ministers. Rob, who a lot of you know, has taken up a regional position. And the church is currently being run by his son, Brad, who's lovely, and Jackie, another lady who I was with yesterday. But they're in a time of transition. The Baptist church is changing. The Uniting Church are kind of similar to us at the moment. They have a few people that are leaving through death and other things. They're in a time of transition. We are most certainly in a time of transition. And I'm excited to see what God is going to do. But I very truly believe in this moment, after spending time with the Anglicans and the Baptists and out at the base, that the way that we're going to move forward is if we all work together to some degree. So that the city of Salvos sees one church of God, one flavour of Christian. Not 100 different ones that they can't quite understand, not 100 different ones that are going to bash them over the back of the head with the Bible. Just one flavour of Christian who is loving, kind, and brings them hope, and is there for justice, and is peace. So that's my challenge to us today, and to me as one of your leaders. How do we do this? How do we work together as a random packet of jelly beans so that the city of Salem can benefit from who we are? And I'm sure I'll come up with 100 different visionary ideas because I'm a purple jelly bean. And some of them won't work. Some of them won't. And I thank you so far for your 18 months of patience, especially with me, as I try new things and throw things at you and say, what's this like for church? And you go, oh, that was interesting, and walk away. So has that been okay? Do you understand? Has the jelly beans helped you? I should give them jelly beans every Sunday. They agree with things. We're going to sing one final song. I think we might sing 10,000 Reasons again, because that is a very good song. And then we are going to, I will say a benediction, and have the morning tea that we meant to put away, Georgia. My plan very much was that we would be finished just before 10, and we might be able to walk over together and see the bishop, and all get to experience the standing up and sitting down. But it doesn't always work the way I planned it to be. So next time, one day, we will join them with this. But let's sing 10,000 Reasons, and then I will give a